We begin today with significant new developments in the case of Bradley Manning. The young man accused of the biggest breach of classified documents in U.S. history pleaded guilty to 10 of the 22 charges against him. He pleaded not guilty to aiding the enemy, the most serious charge against him. Today, the alleged whistleblower spoke on the stand and read aloud a 35-page statement where he defended his actions. He said in his testimony today, quote, "I believe the public release of these cables would not damage the U.S. However, I did agree that the cables might be embarrassing." For more on the new details, RT Web producer Andrew Blake was at the hearing today and joined us earlier from Fort Meade. I asked him what these pleas mean for the case.
Well, it all comes down to whether or not the government actually wants to accept his plea. Now, if the government says, okay, PFC Manning, we will take your plea of guilty on 10 different counts and not guilty on the 12 others, he could face a maximum sentence of 20 years behind bars. Now, there's another chance that the government could accept his plea, but at the same time decide to continue prosecuting him under the charge of aiding the enemy. Now, if that's the case, that is a charge that does carry life in prison. Now, the government could elect to actually execute Manning if they can convict him of aiding the enemy, but they already said that they would not do that. So from what we heard today, PFC Manning did admit guilt to everything. For the first time ever, actually. For the first time after 1,000 days, he actually stood before a court and said, I did this, that, and the other thing. I did it all with WikiLeaks, and they have all of the information that I supplied to them. So the government could use that when it comes time to actually sentence Manning for his eventual court-martial, or it could say, okay, you know what, we accept your plea, we'll see you in 20 years. But what's going to happen today is the judge is going to continue asking Manning about the different charges. From there, she's not going to actually make a decision today, but eventually we're going to see if this case will move to a court-martial or not. So this could extend for a while, actually. The court-martial would begin in June and is scheduled for around 12 weeks, but might not make it that far. The government might just accept his plea.
All right, Andrew, another interesting thing that happened today, Manning took the stand, and I understand it was a lengthy testimony, 35 pages he read. Tell us about his testimony today.
Yeah, he actually went through pretty much everything he was accused of doing. He said, look, here's this collateral murder video. This is how I uploaded it, and this is why. Here are hundreds of thousands of State Department diplomatic cables. I uploaded them, and this is why. And Manning wanted to pretty much explain his intent in releasing the information, something that he wouldn't actually be able to do during the court-martial. So by submitting his plea, he actually pleaded guilty to these things and explained why. And a lot of it really had to do with him saying that he just became depressed with what he was seeing while overseas. The actions that he was seeing while deployed in Iraq just made him uncomfortable. And when he started investigating and started going through these State Department cables and started looking up the collateral murder video, for example, he said these are things that give a much more clear picture of what's actually happening, and the world would benefit by knowing these.
All right, and I also heard that Manning actually brought up the press, specifically the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Reuters. What did he say about possibly taking it there before taking it to Julian Assange's WikiLeaks?
Well, you know, it's no secret that the government is using this case to get closer to WikiLeaks. That is incredibly obvious. And throughout Manning's testimony today, and, you know, even right now in the courthouse in front of me, Colonel Denise Lind is quizzing him, grilling him about his relationship with WikiLeaks. So when Manning first began his testimony this morning or this afternoon, what he told them was, you know, he was familiar with WikiLeaks, but he didn't go to that organization first. The first thing that he did when he had material that he wanted the world to see was he called up the Washington Post, and he talked to them for around 5 minutes on the phone and said, look, I have some things I think you would like to see. Manning said that he believes they didn't take him seriously, and he never heard back from them. From there, he called the New York Times, and he left them a detailed message with multiple ways for them to contact him. In that instance, Manning said he was also not met with a response. So eventually, he figured WikiLeaks was the best organization to go to. He said it seemed to make sense, so he might as well give it a try. And uploading piece after piece of material over the course of, I believe, a few months. And just the point here is that during the pretrial motion hearings last month, one of the government's prosecutors actually said that, if Manning had supplied these materials to the New York Times, the New York Times would be charged with aiding the enemy. So this sets a really, really dangerous precedent here. Had the New York Times answered their phone, or had the Washington Post actually took this young man, he was only 21 or 22 at the time, had they actually taken him seriously and followed up on what he told them, they could have published material that would have essentially closed down the two biggest publications in the entire Western world. So this is going to have really, really, really major implications, especially knowing that, WikiLeaks wasn't his first choice. And the government doesn't seem too concerned with that right now, though. Actually, as we speak, he's being asked about why he went to WikiLeaks, and in particular, what kind of relationship he had with Julian Assange, other associates of WikiLeaks. But on his part, PFC Manning has said that he does not know who he ever talked to at the organization. He said he became familiar with their anti-secrecy viewpoints and how the organization kind of just existed in a way that no one could quite put their finger on it.
That was RT Web producer Andrew Blake.